Is it just me? I'm a bit nauseous.
I think I'm just hungry.
Hi, I'm Junyu, and welcome to our IEX Milestone 4 video. And so, over the last 1.5 to 2 years, we've been working on our regional IEX in Chiang Mai, and this video is kind of like a chance for us to reflect honestly on what we've done and where we are heading next. So in our first part, our team will actually talk about the overview of all our trips that we've done so far, the execution work that we've done on the ground, and some of the key changes and impact we've seen. And in the second part, we're going to talk about more of our focus moving forward. So looking at how the community is changing and what we can do for our creative practice project.
Right, so just to provide a recap of an overview of our whole IEX journey so far, our first trip to the quarry site was primarily a recce trip, so it was a chance for us to familiarize ourselves with the space, the people, as well as the ongoing work on the ground by the seniors. So we began by formally introducing ourselves to the local community as a team that will be continuing and supporting the project. So during the recce, we also spent time walking through the quarry area to better understand how the space is currently being used and how it has changed over time. So we spoke with the community members about past quarrying activities, the current challenges, as well as their hopes for how the land and the water resources could be used in the future. So these conversations helped ground our project in a local context rather than us making assumptions from afar. So with guidance from the senior team, we were also introduced to tangible aspects of past work like the water pump system. So all these hands-on experiences, they helped us to understand how water is managed on site and how it supports daily activities around the quarry too. So a key part of the second trip was conducting basic water and fish testing in the quarry pond with a focus on potential heavy metal contamination. We collected water samples from the pond to test for important heavy metals commonly associated with quarrying activities like lead, which can persist in the environment even after operations have stopped. In parallel, we also examined fish from the pond as indicators of bioaccumulation, observing their condition and using them to assess longer-term indicators or longer-term exposure to contaminants in the water. So together, these tests provided us with baseline data which on both water quality and ecological health, which will inform future monitoring and any sort of interventions that we may propose. So overall, this first recce and water testing trip, it helped us to transition from planning to implementation in the sense that it allows us to firstly align our project goals with on-the-ground realities. Second of all, it allowed us to build trust with the community through day-to-day conversations and interviews. And it also helped us to establish a clearer understanding of the environmental conditions we were working with moving forwards.
For the net implementation, our main objective was to section off part of the quarry where there would be no fish. This was important because it created a protected area for the floating planters, preventing the plants from being eaten. To do so, we connected two 30 by 10 meter nets into a single system using control ropes. We then threaded a reinforced rope along the top and the bottom of the net to support the weights and buoys, and to allow for adjustments after deployment. The top of the net was anchored between trees on opposite sides of the quarry, while weights were attached to the bottom to ensure the net stretched vertically. The net was deployed by boat, pulled across the quarry, secured in place, and adjusted to achieve proper alignment and coverage. At the end of the first day, we noticed that the net wasn't reaching its full vertical height. We realized that the horizontal tension was too high, which prevented the net from stretching downward as intended. To address this, we had to make adjustments the next day by adding more weight to the bottom of the net and loosening the tension along the top. During inspection, we also found that 3 control ropes had been left taut, further restricting the net's movement. Once these were released, the net was able to stretch fully. By the end of the second day, the net was stable, properly tensioned, and functioning as designed. After returning to Singapore, the setup was further strengthened with the help of the locals, who added buckets and bamboo to improve buoyancy, making the final implementation more robust. For the floating planter project, we selected and adapted an existing design that was suitable for already grown water lilies and used materials that were easily sourced locally. We constructed the planter frame using sealed PVC pipes to provide buoyancy, with plastic bottles inside the pipes as a fail-safe to maintain flotation. A netted base was attached to the frame to support the plants while allowing water flow and root growth. One key challenge was ensuring sufficient buoyancy and stability, especially with the added weight of the soil and clay. This required careful material selection and balancing the amount of clay used so that the planters would float without sinking. Another challenge was controlling the water depth needed for optimal water lily growth. We addressed this by making the planter's buoyancy adjustable through the addition or removal of plastic bottles. Transport and deployment was also a concern, which led us to downsize from one large raft to multiple smaller planters that were easier and safer to launch as a prototype. We modified this design by using lightweight plastic trays instead of pots, with holes to allow roots to anchor and grow through, and use clay to stabilize the plants during early growth. After testing prototypes for stability, the planters were launched by boat and secured within the netted area, and set up for ongoing monitoring and future scaling.
This module is called the Impact Experience Project, so maybe we can discuss on the whole what was the impact and what was the experience. Beyond what was already mentioned, and beyond the physical experiments that we set up with the nets and planters, I think our project places a new block on the chapter of this quarry. The first impact was on problem definition. We began with a quarry and an aeration system that our seniors had set up. Our project quantified and qualified the results of this system, with fish and water test results verified by Prof. Jerome, showing that the main issue with the water was not biological but chemical in terms of the heavy metals present. This understanding showed that the quarry was already ecologically viable, and the focus for remediation should be on heavy metal removal. Future groups and efforts can work from this starting point and come up with a better solution for this removal. The second impact was on infrastructure. When we embarked on this project, it was a big question and problem of how we might deploy solutions on or in the water, given that the banks were steep and it wasn't clear how we would deploy rafts or other devices that would not drift or sink over time. Today, we have the net platform that is ready to serve as a test platform for future projects by literally being a surface platform that future projects can test their devices from. While the outcomes of our small raft tests were not successful, the platform makes it easier to scale such solutions for the future. It can be easily redeployed or undeployed through the control rope system we designed, allowing the net to close and open as needed. We see this as our biggest achievement because we effectively tamed the quarry for future projects. The third was on community engagement. We hope that the net system, being a very big and obvious installation in the quarry, is seen by the community as a source of motivation to try new things with the water. Beyond the net, we also engage with locals over the course of the project to hopefully inspire more ground-up action and stir interest in the quarry. One indicator was the large hydroponic setup by one neighbor after we did our first execution trip, as well as the assistance of another neighbor when we needed to collect test samples. By engaging the community, we hope that they will carry the torch and turn the quarry into a source of community pride. In terms of our experience, we have come to appreciate many things otherwise not afforded by local projects. One major takeaway was the general appreciation of how difficult and different ground-up initiatives can be. In our case, building and sustaining momentum was an existential crisis for the project, and many ideas were just not feasible due to the lack of an existing audience or organization to help us mobilize those on the ground. Instead, we realized the immense value of our mere presence by doing things visibly to send the message to the community that someone is trying, and hopefully spur others to take this on as well. Another takeaway was adaptability. As perhaps well-trained thinkers and theorists from NUS, we realized the value of spontaneity. Rather than being hung up on precision and details, we work abstractly yet practically. This really shone through during our net and raft construction process. Rather than having a concrete plan like the one that failed for the water testing, we chose to believe in ourselves and adopt a can-do spirit. Constructing the raft in theory was much harder than just doing it in person, and our team decided not to overplan this, just looking up some online ideas and taking that to the site to see what we could achieve. In that way, even if the plants died, the raft represents a big learning point and success for us as a team.
We initially planned to go on a 5th trip, our last trip to the quarry to wrap things up, improve on our floating planter boxes and get the area in front of Gangnam's office ready to host events. Unfortunately, we were not able to manage the team's schedule and commitments. Furthermore, some of the key community partners that we rely on are uncontactable. Papit have left town, Kanam and his assistant Chad have won their respective elections, giving them the responsibilities of the sub-district chief and village headsman respectively. And what we previously thought were positions that would help our project actually made it much harder to contact them, making it very difficult for us to continue this project. There are definitely some adjustments that still have to be implemented, such as snail bed and possibly a larger planter box to house bigger aquatic plants. But since we are reaching the deadline of our IEX project and the deadline of the IEX runway, the trip is not feasible, at least for now, during the time of recording this milestone video. Thus, we decided to focus our attention to the IEX creative practice. We want to try and bring attention to this project and share the community story, and perhaps even gain the interest of future IEX students to take over our project and make an even greater change for this quarry lake.
Hi, before we explore our ideas for the creative practice medium, allow me to tell you a story about Mali, a girl living in a village. So once upon a time, Mali was a girl living in Chiang Mai who loved visiting the pond at the edge of her village. So she came often, right? She sat at the water's edge and watched fish dart beneath the surface, plants swaying gently in the current. So the pond used to shimmer with life. But over time, she noticed that something had changed. The water grew cloudy and smelled strange. The fish hid more often, and the villagers began to stop coming. What was once a shared space slowly became a place people avoided. In this way, the story begins where our project does. Like Mali, we encountered a pond that was no longer simply a scenic feature but a site marked by past use and gradual neglect. One night, troubled by what she'd seen, Mali dreamt that she shrank and slipped beneath the water's surface. As she shrank, the familiar world above faded and a quieter, heavier world revealed itself. There, she discovered that the pond was alive, a lonely, ailing creature struggling to breathe. Its lungs, once thick with plants, were thinning, and its songs, once vibrant, were now barely even audible. As Mali wandered through this underwater world, she met talking fish that swam slowly and cautiously, and lotuses whose leaves were sparse and fragile. She even encountered a grumpy old stone, a remnant of the old quarry, who spoke of the past. He told her how the pond used to be a gathering place where people and nature met in harmony, before extraction, quarrels, and neglect drove them apart. So this reflects the stories shared with us by the community, and who spoke of the quarry's history and how the mining activities altered both the landscape and the relationships surrounding it. Through these encounters, Mali realized that the pond's suffering was not sudden, but gradual. It was built up over time through small acts of neglect and distance. She learned that the pond could not heal on its own, so recovery required care, not just from nature but from the people around it too. Guided by the pond's inhabitants, she planted magical seeds that could only grow if the villagers nurtured them together, returning again and again rather than expecting immediate change. And so this part of the story parallels our project's emphasis on baseline environmental testing, collective responsibility, and long-term monitoring rather than quick fixes. So our water and fish testing, including checks for quarry-associated heavy metals, represents the careful groundwork needed before any sort of meaningful intervention can take place. When Mali woke, she carried that lesson with her, and she returned to the pond not as a visitor, but as a caretaker. she invited others to come with her to plant lotuses and floating gardens and to slowly rebuild their relationship with the water. Over time, the pond began to breathe again. Mali's journey reflects our own approach to the quarry pond in Chiang Mai, one grounded in listening and embodied engagement as well. So now, we will go back to how we intend to use this story as foundation for our creative practice ideas.
Currently, we plan to have an immersive exhibition booth where audiences can walk through an immersive space, giving them a sense of what it's like to be there at Sam Lon Joy Village. We will display big landscape photos of the quarry, and the audience walk will experience what the quarry actually is like. Maybe some physical and interactive elements too, like the materials used for our floating planter boxes and fishnet. We have also designed and drafted an interactive children's storybook that shares the journey and progress between our seniors and my group's IEX journeys, how the quarry has transformed over the last 3 years and what it could be in the future. Another feature of our booth will be an interactive board that allows audiences to innovate and suggest even more ideas for this quarry lake, where they can draw and paste suggestions on sticky notes in the specific areas of the quarry map provided to them. And lastly, we have a DIY sticker pack design that we could print and give out to audiences that encourage them to build their own vision of the quarry lake. We hope that through our efforts in creative practice, we can accurately and vividly convey Sun Lon Joy's story, gather support, and potentially a successor to carry on our project.
So, in conclusion, I think that our team has really made quite a bit of progress over the last 1.5 to 2 years. I think this progress isn't very linear. It's kind of like many different experiments, many different findings and takeaways. But overall, I think that we have all these kind of help us to build a foundation. So now we have gotten a lot of data. We know like what works and what doesn't work. We have a much better foundation to build off in the future. If we were to continue building a raft, we already have the infrastructure in place, and we also know the results from water testing and fish testing. So based on all of that, I think we have done left quite a good foundation to build upon, to really deliberately think and design our creative practice project, thinking about the experience for the booth itself, how to incorporate interactive elements, and also to reflect and consolidate our learnings into this experience for visitors to come in and really see the work that we have done and what this community in this quarry could transform into.